I'd like to welcome Joseph Thompson, who is the CEO and co-founder of AidTech. Last year we had a brilliant spotlight session also talking about blockchain from Leanne Kemp, who is the CEO of Everledger. So AidTech is using blockchain technology to address some of the largest obstacles in global development and is revolutionising how governments, corporates and NGOs deliver digital entitlements. I think Joseph has joined us from Dublin, but apparently he lives on a plane, so he can tell you more about that. As I said, he's the Chief Executive and Co-founder of AidTech. He is also the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals pioneer for blockchain technology. So I'm sure you are going to learn a lot today. So welcome, Joseph.
Hello, everybody. First of all, thanks for your time, and thanks for Thomson Reuters for actually inviting me here. I've jumped off the plane yesterday, slightly exhausted, been traveling the last few weeks non-stop, and it doesn't help that I'm Irish, so I speak very, very quickly. So I'll make sure I speak slowly. So within the 10 minutes, I'm going to talk about who we are, why we exist. I'm not going to explain what blockchain is. Please come up to me afterwards. It's a conversation in itself. I'm still learning myself. I'll talk about how we're using blockchain to solve some of these, what we see problems, and where we see it going, and how it actually involves slavery, which we didn't actually see at the very start. Where our name comes from is, we saw there's fintech, there's regtech, you have all these industries, but there's no industry for transparency. So we wanted to create a company that's for profit, solve some of the government's biggest problems around the globe, serve some of the underbanked, underdocumented, and so on. But do it in a way that's different, because let's be honest, the as-is isn't working. And I'm not going to go into the Sustainable Development Goals, but there's 17 targets signed up by over 193 countries globally, and these targets are massive opportunities to generate revenue. So that's why we're creating a transparency engine, a transparency protocol. And our tagline is empowering through transparency. And we believe this will help people stop them falling into slavery, giving people access to social services they may not have had before. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about why we exist and how AidTech came to being. So, So I'm not a humanitarian. My background, I'm a complete techie. I worked in banking and I worked in telco. But in 2009, I ran an event in the Sahara Desert called the Marathon des Sables. If anyone's ever heard of it, it's a 151-mile race over 6 days. I'd recommend don't do it. It's absolutely horrible. It's really, really horrible. I did it because I lost a bet, and I didn't want to let my friends get one over me, because Irish people don't let things go. What happened was, people were very, very fortunate. So in 2009, the economies are crashing, especially R&B. We ended up getting a bailout, but people are still very, very generous. So I was looking to raise $10,000, and I ended up raising $122,000. Fantastic. I gave that to a charity, and 9 months later, my main donor, a philanthropist, says, Joseph, I want two things. I want some of that money's gone, and I want to know the impact, how many people have used this money. So I went back to my charity, and in blind faith, I believe what they said. So the money was for children who have reconstructive surgery, but they were building a doctor's school. So I said, okay, where's the plans? I said, the money's being spent on consultants, engineers, and so on. So the money basically went missing. So I said, this is ridiculous. I became a cynic and said, I'm not giving money to any charities, NGOs, again. But it wasn't until I came across blockchain in 2010, but really understood the value proposition of blockchain. Now, put Bitcoin, put it over here and forget Bitcoin, but the value of the blockchain. And with that, we came across the Sustainable Development Goals. And SDG 16.9 says everybody should have a legal identity by 2030. My view of this is, if you don't have an identity, you don't exist, really. You can't get access to remittances, aid, welfare, and so on. So we're using the blockchain to basically give someone an identity. And the way I compare it is, you have an Apple iPhone. If I gave everyone here an Apple iPhone, you can only access it with an Apple ID. But Apple have 900 million users with 190 billion apps downloaded. So our goal is, let's get identities out there for governments, for NGOs, push the price point almost down to zero, and then people can access these different services, remittances, aid, and welfare, and so on. So I'm going to go through a couple of examples of how we're actually using blockchain itself. And I'm the first to admit, blockchain is not the answer for everything. Most panels you go and you see, it's usually white males talking about what blockchain is going to do. and they've no product. So for me, it's a privilege to speak after so many women here. So what I'm going to give you an example here was, we were the first company in the world to use blockchain to deliver international aid to Syrian refugees over 3 years ago. And what we did here was, we partnered with the Red Cross, and my donor from 2009 gave money to fund this project. So we worked with 500 Syrian refugees. The Red Cross had the data on who they were, and we gave out simple plastic cards. And those plastic cards were the identity. So think of your driver's license and your credit card becoming one. So we were able to confirm every transaction on the blockchain. So out of those 500 transactions were $20. Every single cent of that was traceable in real time to the donor and to the Red Cross. That donor is subsequently one of the biggest funders to the Red Cross now, Irish Red Cross. And what we were saying here is, it took me 3 days to get those simple plastic cards printed in Dublin. It took me 2 hours to have 45 fraudulent copies handed into a local store from the Syrian refugees, which I think is fantastic. I would probably do the same if I was in their situation. But it was fantastic to see that you could essentially, we're using new technology to eliminate fraud, crime, and corruption. So that was the basis of it. And then we said, we got to make it bigger than this. We got to link it to a person's identity. The goal being they can receive aid, welfare, any entitlement that can be digitized. So the end beneficiary manages their own data, and they build a data credit profile going forward. Sustainable Development Goal 8, which they're the new Millennium Goals, and Goal 8 is about ending slavery. I was very fortunate to present on this at the Vatican during the summer, and there's somebody else here in the crowd who was I saw earlier on who was also at that event. And when you have the Vatican wanting to know about blockchain and understanding how it can be used, you know things are changing, which is fantastic. Another project that we've done recently is we've had the first baby born on the blockchain, which is quite fantastic. So we're working with a Dutch NGO, and they give out medical entitlements to pregnant women for prenatal and postnatal care. But everything's paper-based, so they can't track the data. We had more data on 67 women than the organization had on 1.2 million women, which is insane. So we could tell when a woman needs to go for a health visit, that the iron tablets had run out in some of the clinics, that a hemoglobin machine was broken. So by using this data, we were actually able to tell that one of the women who didn't turn up for a health visit on a Friday didn't know that her child needed medicine at 2 o'clock the next morning to stop a seizure happening. So we had this thing called a smart contract, which triggered an alert. So the donor didn't pay the doctor. The doctor didn't put in a fraudulent claim. That doctor told his social worker, we're being proactive here, so we have this data. This woman needs this medicine ASAP. It turns out the woman twisted her ankle and she couldn't walk to the clinic. But the social worker was able to go to the clinic and say, here's the medicine that your child needs. So this is the real value of the blockchain. The blockchain is as well viewed as a transparency engine, but it's the data on top which is going to be absolutely game-changing going forward, where we want to empower the end beneficiary that they manage their own data. And what does this have to do with slavery? If somebody has an identity, they're involved in social welfare, aid, and so on, they can get payments or digital entitlements. If they fall off the radar, have they gone missing? Have they gone underground? Where did the last transaction actually happen? So, blockchain is not going to stop slavery, but at least it can be a tool to help mitigate against some of the causes for it. And the data is what's really going to be important here. We've built a product now which goes live with the Red Cross next week, where you can make direct donations to end beneficiaries that have an identity, and it's up to them if they want to share that information. So now I can actually buy zinc tablets on behalf of this pregnant woman in Tanzania. If she is registered with the Red Cross who we work with, or the UN, or Farm Access, the organization that we work with from Holland, actually delivering these entitlements, I now know exactly where my money goes. And this goes back for me trying to solve that problem where somebody stole over $100,000 on me. But now I have complete transparency, so I now know if that lady, if she goes to collect her medical entitlements, I get an email, a notification to say, hey, your money's gone here. So that engages me as a donor, and I have complete transparency. What that can potentially do for governments, for aid, welfare, and so on, it potentially it's massive. I'm just about to wrap up, but we were very lucky last year to win City's Tech for Integrity Game Changer of the Year award for fighting corruption. I think it's a figure of 4.4 trillion goes missing every year through inefficiencies of humans, fraud, corruptions, and so on. Where Christina Guy gave us the award, which we're very, very proud of. I'm the MasterCard's Company of the Year as well. The way we view financial inclusion needs to happen. It's not trying to beat the banks or put the banks to the slide. It's working on top of existing banking system, banking rails. The problem there is KYC and AML. But if you have governments verifying the end beneficiary identity, then the person can access to identity and then they get access to services and so on. The final slide is, I'm very fortunate to be the UN SDG pioneer for blockchain. So it's good that you have all the governments now looking at blockchain as a potential solution to some of their biggest problems, because they need transparency. They need to go back to their donors to let them know where the money goes. And we're just very, very privileged and honored to be part of that journey. So that's my presentation. Please feel free to ask me any questions later on, and my contact details are up there if you want to follow up. Thank you.